Good evening, Happy New Year, and welcome to Chicago Tonight Black Voices. I'm Brandis Friedman. Thanks for sharing part of your weekend with us. On the show tonight, one-on-one with Exelon's newly appointed CEO and president as he takes charge at the Chicago-based energy giant.
All of us have the desire to want to be understood.
The challenges of finding a culturally appropriate therapist. It's called the silent killer, and over half of black adults in America have it. What you need to know about hypertension.
I'm Angelito, and coming up tonight, we're taking you to River West for a very limited show celebrating some of the city's most prolific artists.
All that coming up, but our first story tonight, we meet energy giant Exelon's new CEO right after this.
Chicago Tonight, Black Voices, is made possible in part by Fifth Third Bank and by the support of these donors.
At Fifth Third, we believe when diverse voices are heard and empowered, communities are made stronger, lives are made better, and the future holds greater promise for all. That's why we're proud to support Chicago Tonight Black Voices. Together, we can make a difference. Together, we can drive change.
Though you might not think about it much, the energy that powers so many things we rely on is under constant threat, from extreme weather to security concerns. As the effects of climate change challenge the energy production sector, the utilities charged with producing that energy sustainably, equitably, and affordably are at an inflection point. Now, the Chicago-based utility operator Exelon is also at an inflection point. At the end of 2022, Calvin Butler Jr. was named president and CEO of the giant conglomeration of utility companies, among them Chicago's ComEd. And, of course, Calvin Butler Jr. joins us now. Congrats on the new position. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Brandis. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So you're moving to Chicago from Baltimore very soon, right now, to take on this role. But you've got a long history at Exelon. Tell us a little bit about how you rose to this position.
Sure. I started with Exelon, ComEd, actually, in 2008. And started in their legislative affairs area, and then moved over to corporate. Ran HR for a minute, and then we decided to acquire Constellation Energy, which is Baltimore Gas and Electric, part of that family. And I was responsible for being on the ground getting that deal done. Did that for about 1.5 years, and then moved the family out there in 2013 and became its CEO of Baltimore Gas and Electric in 2014. Ran that for 5.5 years, and then took over the utilities, CEO of all the utilities. So at that point, we had grown from just 2 up to 6. And under the leadership of the last 10 years, ran that utility business from 2019 until Chris Crane and the board made me president COO in October of this year. And then Chris announced his retirement and got me to this job come December 31st.
Yeah, you've been on the job for a hot week now.
Hot week.
And it seems like obviously sticking with the company has worked out for you, because look at where you are now. But I have to ask, we're still waiting on the trial date for former Illinois House Speaker Michael Madigan in alleged bribe scheme with ComEd, which ComEd is cooperating with the U.S. Attorney's Office on. How is Exelon working to move forward from that episode?
Absolutely. No, thank you for asking, because it's unfortunate. It really was, because all the good work the 6,000 men and women do every day has been tainted by the actions or the alleged actions of a few. And what I can tell you, the men and women every day at ComEd show up to keep the lights on, and they do an amazing job. And ComEd has continued through all the noise to deliver. It was just recently ranked the #1 most reliable utility in the country. Has the lowest rates of most urban cities in the top 12, right? Urban city. And that doesn't come from lack of hard work. So my focus has been and will continue to be on the 6,000 men and women who show up to work every day, and we'll get this behind us. Yeah.
And what measures do you take to ensure that something like this doesn't happen again in the future?
No, that's a great question. Immediately, what we did, I think the first thing we did, we went out and hired a compliance officer who had SEC securities background. He put in plans, not just at ComEd, he put in a program across all of our utilities. And we did an audit of each of our businesses to ensure conduct that was alleged was not occurring in any other parts of the business. And I'm pleased to tell you it wasn't. But we put in those robust programs, and now they're a model for other companies across the country. Matter of fact, in the legislation that was passed about a year and a half ago here in Illinois, the Climate Equity and Jobs Act, they took most of ComEd's compliance efforts and put them into legislation. We're proud of that, and it's a culture shift, and we will continue to work that. We're not done, though, because soon as you relax on programs or ingraining the high ethics and integrity in which we should be known for, in which we pride ourselves, it can fall back into place. So we're on it every day.
So in places like Texas, California, the stability of the power grid, it's an ongoing issue, as you know. What's Exelon doing in places that it serves to ensure energy stability?
We invest tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars into the security, not just the physical security, but the cybersecurity of the grid, because we know there's bad actors who want to attack the system. And our men and women, once again, we're investing in our IT systems, we're investing in our cameras, we're investing in fencing in some of your neighborhoods. You may go by a substation one day and it looks relatively manila, but then you go back, the next thing you know, you see high security fencing around it. Those are the efforts that we undertake to ensure that the grid is protected, and we're constantly monitoring it. We have centers located not only in the Mid-Atlantic, but here in Chicago, that monitor the traffic around our substations. So it's very important to us, and it is a priority.
You've talked about delivering energy equitably.
Yes.
Explain what inequities exist and how do you plan to address them?
Inequities exist because not everyone can afford to put rooftop solar on their homes. Not everyone can afford to purchase an electric vehicle. Not all neighborhoods will have charging stations in them, but we do know the black and brown communities are disproportionately impacted by climate change. So it's incumbent upon us as your utility company to understand what are we going to do about it and be part of that solution. So once again, in the Climate Equity and Jobs Act, there's legislation focused on ensure that the transition to a decarbonized clean energy future is not leaving those traditionally under-resourced neighborhoods behind. Chicago has 77 neighborhoods, and my goal is to ensure that each of those neighborhoods transition to a clean economy and not one of them get left behind. That's equity to me.
And to that point, how is Exelon positioned for transitioning to renewable energy sources?
Well, the great part about this is that since our split from Constellation, we are your deliverer of electricity. So we're agnostic to what the power comes from, whether it's nuclear, solar, wind, hydro. My job is to deliver it reliably and affordably. So once I do that and build the infrastructure to protect the grid and make the grid more resilient, that's my job each and every day, and that's what we focus on. So Exelon, ComEd specifically, is investing into that infrastructure so it can remove all type of power sources to your home and to your businesses.
And to that point, what is the status of Exelon's infrastructure today? How are you doing?
Doing very well. As I stated earlier, that we were voted ComEd, the most reliable utility in the country in 2022. That is because of the $2+ billion we've been investing in that infrastructure. And by working with the regulators and legislators, it's remained affordable. And that's what I'm most proud of, because I recognize for some of our customers, $1 a month is a lot of money. And we really are protecting the rate of change in our bills. And as we transition off of the current rate-making process, that's still very important to us. And we are working with the Commission to make sure that that happens seamlessly and that no one is surprised by a large step increase.
You are now one of just 7 black CEOs currently leading Fortune 500 companies. What does that mean to you?
It means my mother would be very proud. You know, it's an honor. It really is, because, you know, I know where I come from. I come from North St. Louis. And the reality of it is that I've had a lot of good people invest in me, and it's my job to invest in others and ensure that, you know, I'm one of 7, but shame on us. It should be one of many. And 7 is not many when you look at the Fortune 500. So what am I doing to ensure that the grounds are being made fertile for others to follow behind me? In addition to that, I recognize the responsibility. My responsibility is first to the 18,000 men and women of Exelon, but then also be representative in the communities that we serve.
Okay. we'll have to leave it there. Calvin Butler Jr., congrats on your new position, new president and CEO of Exelon. You've been on the job for a week.
Yes.
So I hope you're settling in nicely, and we look forward to having you back again.
Thank you, Brandis.
Thank you. Organizations and individuals are fighting to provide more mental health services to Black and Latino Chicagoans, and part of that effort means growing a more diverse pool of therapists. In partnership with Northwestern University's Medill School of Journalism, we take a look at the issue on our website, WTTW.com/news. Here's journalist and Northwestern professor Ava Thompson Greenwell with a portion of that story.
VERONICA WANZER, counselor and assistant professor at the Chicago School of Professional Psychology, has experience as both a therapist and a Black woman seeking therapy.
Look for someone that was competent. It was my approach at first. I quickly realized that many of the people, even though they had degrees and were very competent on paper, wouldn't be able to support me culturally.
WANZER says she believes in the importance of having a therapist from a similar background.
So my counselor now is also an African-American woman, and she has also aligns with a lot of my identities or diversity variables, but not all, but some, and the sum is enough.
And you can see the full story produced in partnership with students at Northwestern University's Medill School of Journalism on our website. Up next, the high prevalence of high blood pressure. It is a new year, and for many of us, that means taking a fresh look at our habits and trying to enter 2023 in better health than we exited 2022. But one condition can fly under the radar of even the most health-conscious of us: hypertension. According to the American Heart Association, about 55% of Black adults have high blood pressure, also known as hypertension. Black Americans also have disproportionately high rates of more severe HPB and tend to develop it earlier in life. Higher rates of obesity and diabetes among Black Americans increase the risk for high blood pressure, and uncontrolled hypertension is a major risk factor for stroke, heart failure, and kidney disease. But medication, diet, and exercise can help control it. Joining us now with more are Dr. Pierre Blemmer, Assistant Professor of Nephrology and Hypertension at Northwestern University's School of Medicine and a Northwestern medicine physician; Monique Colbert, a nurse practitioner at Rush University Medical Center; and Dr. MARLON, a cardiologist with Advocate Health. Thanks to all three of you for joining us. Dr. Everett, let's start with you, please. What exactly is hypertension, and why do we call it the silent killer?
Well, hypertension is essentially it's really a measure of what the heart pumps against, and that ends up being the blood vessels and the resistance that the blood vessels actually that they create that go what makes the heart pump against it. So in other words, the heart has to pump blood around the body. There is a resistance that it has to go against, and that's high blood pressure. It can come from a number of reasons, but essentially it's the relaxation or the constriction of the blood vessels that the heart pumps against.
Why do we call it the silent killer? Something we don't notice?
Yeah, well, it's almost always asymptomatic or something that we don't really feel. And I would say that when you do feel it, that's really the danger time. That's the time where you really have to be concerned about some of the acute or effects that may that happen from bad effects that may happen with high blood pressure, such as a stroke immediately, or some sort of a congestive heart failure, or vision disturbances that can come right at the time of the high blood pressure. But essentially, most people walk around with this high blood pressure and not know anything about it.
Dr. Blemmer, why is this such a pervasive problem in the Black community particularly?
I think, like you mentioned earlier, I think there's a higher prevalence of certain comorbidities or other diseases like obesity, diabetes, but I think there's a lot of other socioeconomic factors that make it a pervasive factor. I think lack of access to medical care, lack of insurance sometimes plays a role, lack of affordability of medications that could help control blood pressure, unfortunately, are prevalent issues in the Black community. I believe that in general, even people with high blood pressure, 1 in 4 people have it under control. And I think for the Black population, it's probably even more so an issue because of those factors. And not only that, also, access to good food, access to be able to go outside, be active, access to exercise, and just other general well-being things, and those things also make it more pervasive in the community.
And you say 1 in 4 have it under control. That means 3 in 4 don't have it under control. Monique, Colbert, how do many people find out that they have it?
Many people find out that they may have high blood pressure at a physician screening when they come to the doctor's office, but oftentimes what happens is that people actually are hospitalized. For whatever reason, maybe they didn't feel good, was it on the verge of having a stroke, did they have a heart attack, or being hospitalized for pre-procedure and just checking their blood pressure at that time, but oftentimes that is how they find out that they have high blood pressure.
An emergency or a crisis, often.
Correct.
Dr. Everett, what impact does high blood pressure have on the heart?
Oh, it has a lot. So as I mentioned earlier, it's the effect, it's the resistance that the heart has to pump against. So what happens is that the heart cannot get blood out of it to go around the body easily. It has to work harder. And just like if you were to, say, lift weights with your arms and your biceps muscles get bigger, everyone wants to get big Popeye type arms. Well, that's not good for the heart. Essentially what happens is if the heart has to work hard like that, it starts to thicken. And a thick heart is not a good thing. It often will thicken and then will subsequently get larger and then start to really enlarge and then start to become weak. So then you start to lead to other effects that happen, such as heart failure and other valve issues or other problems where the heart valves start to leak. So that's really the biggest issue that you have against for high blood pressure from the heart.
Dr. Blemmer, what about the kidneys?
Well, other than second to diabetes, high blood pressure is the leading cause of kidney failure. And it's basically with elevated blood pressure, causes narrowing of the vessels within the kidney, can cause damage to the vessels within the kidney over time, and basically lead to progressive chronic kidney disease.
Monique Colbert, what advice do you give your patients for controlling their blood pressure?
One thing I give them is to become informed. To partner with their healthcare provider, whether it's a practitioner or a doctor, and to definitely, of course, if they're on medication, take the medication, but most importantly, if they think that they're having side effects or something doesn't agree with that, then to communicate with their provider without just stopping the medication, because that's key, building that relationship, because there's alternatives that we could be using as far as medication, as well as other education, such as diet, other resources, and pharmacy resources.
Dr. Everett, should people with family history of hypertension be especially concerned?
No question about it. I mean, there's a lot of causes, and we kind of talked about those causes of high blood pressure, but one of the causes can be family history as well, and unfortunately, I guarantee you most people will say somebody in their family, especially if you're African-American, will say that you have someone in your family that has high blood pressure. That's why really, in general, everyone should be screened for it, just because it's so prevalent and so popular. There was one of the leaders in high blood pressure over the years. He's passed away, but he's one of the founders of really managing high blood pressure. Is a guy named Dr. Elijah Saunders. Who's written many books about high blood pressure. And he used to say that about 70% of African Americans will have high blood pressure by the time they're 60. And he said by the time you're 70, it almost comes up to about 100%. So that being said, I think it just underscores the importance of how many of us need to be screened and understand that it is very, very prevalent and it probably will happen to you. So you should really look for it.
Dr. Blemmer, we've talked about it being the silent killer, and it sounds like this is a condition it might be easy for people to ignore, right? What do you say to people who are inclined to just not bother to get it checked out?
I would say the sooner that you get diagnosed with it, the sooner you could do something about it. It's not always you need medications in order to control. There's lifestyle changes, dietary changes, exercise, stress, wellness, things like that that could help control blood pressure. But the sooner you find out about it, the more you could do about it. And I always say it's better that you find out about it before it finds you. When there's damage that cannot be reversed. So I usually try to tell people to make sure that they, get screened and that they, see their providers and find out if it's something that needs to be addressed sooner than later.
Okay, Monique Colbert, same question to you in about 10 seconds. What do you tell folks who are inclined to avoid what they fear might be bad news?
Discussion is key. Because although they may feel it's bad news, once we have that discussion, we can also do treatment. Just as Dr. Blemmer has said, there may be alternatives such as lifestyle, diet, education, the nutrition, teaching them how to grocery shop, teaching them how to cook. So definitely having that open discussion, the sooner the better, just communication.
Okay, Monique Colbert, Dr. Pierre Blemmer, and Dr. Marlon Everett. Thanks to all three of you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, Angel Ito and a short-run show celebrating Chicago artists. A new gallery and novelty shop has formed roots in River West. They're eager to transform the space into a community art center that supports artists in both the city and beyond. So they decided to have an end-of-year exhibition to showcase some of those creatives they'll be working with. Arts correspondent Angel Ito shares a preview of Work Friends at Cherry Mountain Arts.
We are trying to really embody what art is supposed to be like for everybody. And I think these artists and their work allows us to be able to do that because everybody is a little bit different. They have their own personal missions, their own style.
That's the mission of designer-turned-illustrator and fine artist RELLO, who recently opened Cherry Mountain Arts in an effort to uplift artists he's worked with throughout his career.
Our show is entitled Work Friends, and the show is about showcasing artists that we're going to work with, and we want to highlight the people that believe in what our mission is too, and just kind of wrap our arms around them.
The exhibition highlights signature artists known for having specific styles, such as Magpie and Nico Washington. Ornate furniture pieces also sit within the space, as well as work by RELLO himself.
Two catalysts of my character world are Ruby and Ozzy, a different take on Mickey and Minnie, named after Ozzy Davis and Ruby Dee. The big concept was about taking these iconic characters that people love and interpreting these characters as black characters. If Mickey Mouse was a black person, would you still love Mickey Mouse the same? We had Krusty the Clown from The Simpsons, flipped that and turned it Homie the Clown. I do like the storytelling behind Homie the Clown. That kind of goes, just because I look like a clown doesn't mean you can treat me like one. You have to treat people the right way regardless of how you think they look or what you might think they are.
RELLO says it's through this exhibition that he hopes people understand the importance of interpretation as they continue to engage with art created by black artists.
Other people that don't look like us need to understand why this representation is in art, because we get it already because we live through it. The people that engage with black people need to understand why it is important to make sure you treat everybody the right way. We don't need to understand how to treat black people the right way. We know. We know how generally as a community we want to be treated. So it's the art is for everybody. It's just everybody's looking at it, standing in a different position.
For Chicago Tonight Black Voices, I'm Angel Ito.
Cherry Mountain Arts plans to transform its current exhibition space into a community arts center slated for mid-February. In the meantime, you can see Work Friends on Milwaukee Avenue in River West through January 8th. And that's our show for this weekend. Be sure to check out our website, WTTW.com/news, for the very latest from WTTW News, including some of the big provisions of the Safety Act and which are other than cash bail. Of course, if you are watching us on Saturday night, know that you can also catch Black Voices and Latino Voices on Sundays beginning at 10 p.m. And join me and Paris Schutz next week at 7 on Chicago Tonight. Some musical memories before we go. On the last day of 2022, Anita Pointer of the Pointer Sisters died at age 74. The Sister Act's pop and R&B hits topped the charts throughout the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And on New Year's Day 2023, Fred White, drummer for the legendary Chicago band Earth, Wind & Fire, died at 67 years old. We leave you tonight with a 1974 performance by Earth, Wind & Fire on WTTW. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight Black Voices, I'm Brandis Friedman. Thank you for sharing part of your weekend with us. Stay healthy and safe, and have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a proud sponsor of diversity, equity, and inclusion-focused free continuing legal education for lawyers throughout the region.